So here's the problem I have with my existing lifting platform and why I need to replace it. So the existing platform is just basically a pile of plywood laying on top of each other. And so we built this about 6 months ago, and you can kind of tell that there's some divots. Some of the plywood has kind of bent out of shape and whatnot. I didn't put enough. We tried measuring everything out in a grid, but the problem is we put a barbell on it. There's like a high point right here. And so it just kind of rolls around, which kind of sucks. So this is the platform after 2 months. How many times do you think I had to re-level it? It looks pretty good, but you'll have to keep watching to find out. I'll also include a bunch of like lesson learned stuff from this entire, not debacle, but interesting project. I was thinking this plywood would work, and I think it would have worked if the grade of the floor that everything is sitting on was relatively, I wouldn't say level, but consistent. But there are so many different bumps and humps on this garage floor, and it's not even like flat concrete. It's like this kind of rough poured concrete. So basically you kind of see it's just a mishmash of different pieces of wood. We were trying to like build everything based on a grid. And my biggest problem with this is that I didn't buy enough thin plywood. I went with all the same thickness of plywood, so everything just got very uneven. But yeah, I tried using liquid nails to glue everything together and screws, and it was just messy. So this is what we're working with. This is, why is the platform here? Because it's the only place in this tiny, tiny garage that allows me to actually do Olympic style lifts. So as you can see, if we go down, you can definitely tell how uneven this entire ground surface is. So that piece of lumber right across by the wall, that is level. So basically we're going to build a frame and then level it off with a pile of sand, and then putting some of this used plywood back on top of it. I'm pretty much just going by the seat of my pants. Gonna drop a couple $100 on just stuff just to see if it'll work. So we're gonna build the frame. I've got these brackets, and so I bought the most heavy-duty looking 90-degree brackets I could find at my local hardware store. My biggest concern is that these 2x2s, technically, I guess, won't be strong enough. Like, I'm afraid that with the sand, with the waste dropping in my bow and everything, but I can't go any higher because of the roof, or I can't use any sort of wood that's thicker. So, well, we're gonna see, and well, if it doesn't work, then we get to redo all of this. Totally forgot to charge the drill. Frick. So we've got the frame. We gotta go try to level this entire thing. As you can see, we've got some work to do. Basically gonna keep adding shims and scrap pieces of wood until we get the frame level. So, yay! Next thing I have to do is go parent, so I'll come back later tonight. In general, it's always nice to have the right tools to be able to do things like this. You can kind of tell just how big the elevation difference is. Trying to put all these shims, trying to make this thing level. Now, I don't think this edge actually has much to do other than, to keep all the sand in the poly that I'm going to put it in. But it needs to be strong enough that I can step on it without, it bending. And so I've done the sides. So, if I was to stand on that, it generally wouldn't crack or bend much, I'll say. I still have to do kind of that corner as well as, well, this big corner. And I'm not too worried about this one for some odd reason, mostly because I've got a lot of scrap plywood that I'm going to shove under there, but... All right, so now I basically have my glorified sandbox. I'm gonna start pouring the sand in after I clean everything up. But I need to pour enough sand so that I can put a piece of plywood on top of the sand, as well as a gym mat, and that those two thicknesses results in a height of 1 inch and 1/8. So I bought a plastic drop sheet. It's 0.03 millimeters thick and it's heavyweight. I do not have any confidence whatsoever that this will not puncture because of the rough floor. So I've been trying to find all the hardware stores like a thicker polyurethane sheet, but apparently none of them sell it. Now I know I have a roll back at home. The amount of sand that I need, I'm gonna have to figure out, well, tomorrow morning, because apparently it's bedtime for me. All right, so I'm back. Found the thicker type of poly, I think this is more like a vapor barrier of some sort. I don't know, found it lying around my house. But I figure if this on the bottom, this thing on top, there's 2 layers, we should be good. Still flying by the seat of my pants. So I think I'm just gonna leave it with this black stuff. It is feels way more robust than this drop sheet that I bought. So we're just gonna do what I was hoping to do 2 days ago. Start filling this up with sand. All right, so I've got about 8 bags of sand in this thing. I think I'm gonna need at least 4 more is my guess looking at this, but I will know for sure. I'm gonna start leveling everything with that 8-foot 2x4. I think that's the only piece of 8-foot wood I have left. I'm gonna mark how high it has to be. I'll put a guide on it so that I can just kind of run it along the edge of the sandbox, just to start leveling everything out. So it's too early for this. So I had to wait about an hour before I could start using my power tools. No, noise bylaws. I decided not to use the, I moved it out, the 2x4. It's an 8-foot 2x4, and it was gonna fit very snugly against the entire width of the box. And I thought, hey, maybe I can just trim it. But then I hate having 8-foot length 2x4s that aren't actually 8-foot in length. So I went and cut a bunch of scrap wood. And so this is my leveler. This distance is basically the width of the plywood I'm going to put on top of the sand, as well as the plastic mat. And so this will give me a really good sense of how much more sand I need. So let's get to leveling. Now I'm excited about this. Almost done. All right, so that's pretty level. Looks pretty great. Been cleaning off the plywood from the original platform. I'm gonna try to put that piece on here, and then we'll see kind of how it goes. I'm gonna try to do it by myself. There's a good chance I won't be able to. So this will be fun. Might have to wait for Val to come help me. Sand in, plywood's on top. I didn't buy any more plywood because I used the stuff left over from the original platform. So I had to make do with cutting a tiny bunch of little pieces, but I'm so excited. It feels pretty good. So I'm gonna clean it up a little bit. I'm gonna tape the poly on top of one another, and then I'm gonna drop the gym mats back on top of it. So, whew, almost done. I'm going to run into a problem because this square is just like a 1/4 inch too small. So we're going to find out how much give these gym mats have. That's not bad. Apparently when you buy 4x6 gym mats, they're not necessarily 4x6. Pretty excited. I think this is going to be great. Feels pretty solid, still pretty loud. So still have to use the crash mats for some of the heavier lifts, but there's no unintentional roll really anywhere, which is kind of nice. So this is the platform after 2 months. How many times do you think I had to re-level it? It looks pretty good, but you'll have to keep watching to find out. I'll also include a bunch of like lesson learned stuff from this entire, not debacle, but you know, interesting project. Now, basically every video that we've done on this channel has been made on this platform. Now, after a month, we did notice our barbell starting to roll a little bit towards the center of the platform. So we took off all the mats, checked the levels, and found that the middle was level, but the edges were not. So we stripped everything off and put about half a bag of sand to level it all out again. For the second month, we really went out of our way to drop the weights on the platform, and after a period, there was a slight roll in one of the corners. So again, we took everything off and checked the levels again. For the most part, it was all pretty good except for that one spot. So we took about 1/8 of a bag of sand and just leveled everything again and put everything back on top. Now going forward, I think we're gonna use those crash mats a lot more instead of just dropping the weights directly on it. I never meant for this to be a really strong platform to drop on. I just wanted a level surface so that I can, well, just lift properly. So that's the platform. Here are a few things that I probably would have changed or done slightly differently now that I've gone through this entire process. So hopefully this helps you guys. Now, one of the things I think I mentioned earlier is being able to reinforce, I think from that corner or that side to this side. I feel that the box is slowly getting bigger this way, and the wood that I'm using isn't strong enough to keep it all from bowing. But given the constraints that I had with the height of this beam, my height and my overhead position, I really didn't have much of a choice, I don't think. So if you're doing this, figure out a way to brace from that point all the way to that point. That's the first thing I learned. Second thing I learned is that the wood would get chewed up. So this corner here, we basically just roll our Home Depot concrete squat racks off, and so it just kind of like chews up the corner of the platform. So next time at the hardware store, I'm going to try to find a metal bracket to put on this corner to reduce the amount of wear and tear. I think it's more aesthetic maybe. It'll take a long time for me to like chew through all that wood using that bucket, but still, I don't want to see my hard work go to waste. Third lesson I learned was that these brackets I thought were a good idea, but they have screws along the inside of them as well. And so they kind of butt up against the gym mat. And so it makes the corners slightly unlevel. And you've also got the vapor barrier kind of wrapped up from the corners. And so everywhere along the lifting platform, the corners are slightly higher. Now, that doesn't really affect the performance of anything. It just is silly. So, you know, maybe find a bracket that goes on the outside or use a bunch of different brackets, or just do what I did and just accept the fact that that's going to happen. Fourth lesson would be to use thicker plywood. So I ended up buying a ton of this 1/2 inch stuff, and I feel that having, you know, maybe a 3/4 inch plywood would reduce the amount of flex that the plywood would have when I dropped a bumper plate onto the platform. It would absorb the shock a little better. But again, I was constrained by height, so I couldn't do that because everything leveled out to that corner, which was the highest corner there. But if you're doing this and you don't have my problems, definitely go with thicker plywood. The fifth thing is to cut your plywood pieces to actually fit. I don't know if you guys saw in the video, I've got like these tiny thin pieces that are taped up right along this area here. And I think the bigger area that you can cover in your sandbox without having to fill it out with like random gap things, it's going to work a little better. That's an assumption that I have, but that's the only other thing I can think of that I could have made this platform better. So the last thing I will say is that if you're doing this, this is a pretty small platform. This is a, 6x8, 12x8 platform. So it's not terribly big. So it was easy for me to take everything off and re-level it. But if you're doing it on a, we'll say a mass scale, or if I'm filling up this entire space with one of these platforms, just be aware that you do have to re-level it. You do have to like add some stuff to it. So don't go too crazy with what you're gonna do with it. I think the sand platform works very well for a small platform, but if you're doing it for a large area, I don't know. Maybe that'll be the next thing we'll try. Anyways, first time watching one of our videos, Val and I, we do fitness related reviews. This is kind of
a review of some sort, click subscribe, questions, comments, leave them down there. We've got some massage ball reviews coming, we've got some skipping rope reviews coming, and finally the shoe reviews coming as well. So thanks for watching.